Diane's pension arrived exactly as promised. The number was correct. And that is the problem. 31 years of contributions, calculated precisely, delivered on schedule. She made herself coffee. She sat at the kitchen table. She had done everything correctly, and the statement confirmed it. What it did not confirm is whether that number will keep arriving for the next 20 or 30 years, whether the system beneath it is as stable as it appears, whether the promise will survive the conditions it depends on. This isn't about Diane. This is about the number you're counting on, whatever age you are. This video is the continuation of that examination. In the first part, we established the legal architecture, the 5 mechanisms through which pension systems fail. We documented Detroit, Pritchard, Puerto Rico, Greece. We examined why the Netherlands and Sweden succeeded where others did not. Even if you didn't watch part 1, everything you need is in this video. This part examines what comes next, not for pension systems in the abstract, but for the specific people inside them, the people who followed the rules, who made the contributions, who received the statements, who built their lives around a number, and what the historical record shows about what those people did when the architecture began to shift beneath them, the ones who preserved what they had built and the ones who lost it. The question most people ask when they encounter this information is some version of the same thing. What do I do now? It is the right question, but it is often asked in the wrong order. Before examining what to do, it is worth understanding precisely what the threat is, because pension risk is different from most financial risks people are accustomed to managing. Treating it like a market risk or a credit risk leads to responses that address the wrong problem. Here is what most people miss. Pension risk is not investment risk. The money in your pension fund is invested, and performance matters, but you cannot control it. And it is not the primary variable in whether your benefit is paid as promised. Pension risk is not fraud risk. Pension fund managers have occasionally committed fraud, but this is rare. The systematic threat to pension systems is not theft. It is arithmetic. Pension risk is, at its core, political risk combined with demographic risk operating over a very long time horizon. Political risk, the benefit you were promised, was created by a political decision and can be modified by a political decision. Your contributions do not create a legally enforceable ownership claim in most jurisdictions. They create an expectation, honored as long as the political system finds it possible and preferable to honor it. Demographic risk, the system that pays your benefit, depends on the ratio of active contributors to benefit recipients. Remaining within a range the mathematics can sustain. That ratio has been deteriorating in every developed economy for 4 decades. And here is where the two risks converge. As the demographic mathematics worsen, the political cost of maintaining the full promised benefit rises. At some point, the political cost of maintaining the promise exceeds the political cost of modifying it. And when that threshold is crossed, the modification occurs. In Detroit, that threshold was crossed in 2013. In Greece, in 2010. In Pritchard, Alabama, retirees received nothing. No warning, no process. The city simply stopped writing checks. The threshold is not visible from the outside until it has been crossed. The signal that it has been crossed is the benefit cut. By the time the signal arrives, the options available have narrowed significantly. So what do the people who survived this actually do differently? The answer follows a pattern. 4 components, every time. The first is diagnostic. Every public pension system is required to publish actuarial reports. These reports contain the funded ratio, the percentage of promised future benefits currently covered by assets. 100% means the system has everything it needs. 70% means it has roughly 70 cents for every dollar. The specific numbers vary by country and system, but the pattern is identical everywhere. In the United States, the average funded ratio for state pension systems is approximately 72%. Using more conservative return assumptions, independent analysts estimate the true funded ratio closer to 55%. Some systems are already under acute pressure. Illinois is funded at roughly 43%, New Jersey closer to 35%, Kentucky under 50%. The largest public pension fund in the U.S. reports 72% on its own assumptions. Independent analysts estimate closer to 50%. In the United Kingdom, defined benefit pension schemes have faced persistent deficits, with aggregate shortfalls measured in the hundreds of billions. In Canada, provincial pension obligations carry similar structural pressures. Germany's statutory contribution rate has risen for decades, and projections require further increases. Australia's superannuation system carries stronger individual ownership protections, but is not immune to legislative modification. These are not future risks. These are current conditions, documented, published, available to any pension participant. Who requests the actuarial report? Almost no pension participant ever does. The second component is scenario analysis. This is where it changes. Not pessimism, the same approach any careful analysis of an uncertain future requires. 3 versions. Scenario 1, the promised benefit is delivered in full on schedule for your projected lifetime. This is what annual statements are designed to make you assume. It may occur. Many systems will deliver. Scenario 2, the benefit is delivered with modifications, a reduction in cost of living adjustments, a modest cut to the monthly payment, a delayed retirement age. This is the most common outcome in systems under fiscal stress. Detroit retirees experienced this. Greek pensioners experienced this. French workers saw their retirement age raised by 2 years in 2023, triggering months of unrest, not because the mathematics were wrong, but because the political cost of acknowledging them had been deferred, until the adjustment was unavoidable. Scenario 3, significant benefit reduction, 20 to 40%. Rarer in well-governed systems, but documented. Puerto Rico, Greece, Pritchard, Alabama. The framework does not require you to predict which scenario will occur. It requires you to understand your financial position across all three and whether you can sustain an acceptable quality of life in the middle and worst cases. Not just the best one, if the full promised benefit is the only scenario in which your retirement plan works. Your plan has a single point of failure in a structure you cannot afford to rebuild. The third component is what the historical record identifies most consistently, and this is the part nobody explains. It is not clever investment strategy, it is not political connection, it is not superior information, it is distribution of dependency. The people who navigated pension crises with the least damage were not those with the most money. They were those whose total financial position was least dependent on the pension as their only significant source of income. A retired city worker who had supplemented pension contributions with independent savings, owned property, and had other income sources, experienced the same benefit cut with other resources to draw on. The loss was real. It was not catastrophic. The mathematics are straightforward. If a single source represents 90% of your projected retirement income, a 30% reduction in that source reduces your total income by 27%. If that same source represents 50% of your projected retirement income, the same 30% reduction costs you 15%. The cut is the same. The outcome is not. The historical record across every pension crisis studied, public and private, domestic and international, shows this pattern with remarkable consistency. The depth of the crisis for individuals correlated strongly with the concentration of their financial dependence on the system under stress. This applies whether you are 32 and 40 years from retirement or 62 and 3 years away. The earlier the distribution begins, the more time it has to compound. The later it begins, the more urgent it becomes. Distribution of dependency is not the same as abandoning pension contributions. In most cases, pension contributions offer employer matches, tax advantages, and compounding that make them mathematically compelling regardless of long-term uncertainty. The argument is not to contribute less, it is to contribute simultaneously to other structures, to avoid the condition where the pension is the only significant asset. The fourth component addresses the specific mechanism most people overlook: inflation erosion. And this is the risk that almost nobody talks about. Of the 5 mechanisms through which pension systems fail: benefit reductions, tax increases, service deterioration, inflation erosion, and national intervention, inflation erosion is the most frequently deployed and the least visible. A nominal benefit cut requires a decision, a vote, often a legal process. It is visible. It generates response. Inflation erosion requires none of these things. If a pension benefit is fixed at $3,000 per month, and inflation runs at 4% annually, the real purchasing power of that benefit falls by approximately 33% over 10 years, 50% over 20 years, without any formal change to the nominal benefit. The statement keeps arriving. The number keeps looking correct. The purchasing power quietly declines. For pension systems that include cost of living adjustments, this is partially addressed. But cost of living adjustments are among the first modifications made under fiscal stress. Detroit retirees lost them in the bankruptcy settlement. The mechanism designed to protect against inflation erosion is itself subject to political modification. A pension does not fail when payments stop. It fails much earlier, when the system can no longer guarantee the future. It fails the moment you stop being able to plan around it, and most people won't notice it happening until their lifestyle quietly no longer works. Eleanor is a teacher. Her pension system reported a funded ratio of approximately 77%. In its most recent actuarial valuation, assuming 7.5% annual returns, if actual returns average 6%. Still historically generous, the system does not reach full funding on schedule. The gap grows. The projected benefit reductions accumulate. Her legislature has modified pension benefits before. A suspension of cost of living adjustments triggered protests and governance changes. The political dynamics around pension modification are not theoretical. They are active and ongoing. Eleanor does not know what her pension board will do next year, or in 5 years, or in the decade after that. Neither does anyone else. What she knows, what the actuarial reports document, is that the system is operating with a funded ratio below 80%. Optimistic return assumptions and worsening demographics. Replace her state with yours. Replace her profession with yours. Replace her name with yours. The structure is identical. This is the condition in which millions of public sector workers across every developed economy are making retirement plans. Some pension systems carry strong legal protections, constitutional language, court rulings that have struck down benefit reductions repeatedly. The legal protection is genuine, but legal protection does not create money. When a system is funded at 43 cents for every dollar it has promised, and allocates the highest share of its budget to pension contributions of any jurisdiction in its country, and that share keeps rising, the money directed to pensions is not available for schools, infrastructure, or economic development. Strong legal protection changes the form of the crisis without eliminating it. Instead of nominal benefit cuts, residents experience service deterioration, high taxes, and outmigration that further shrinks the tax base. The pension statement keeps arriving with the correct number. The quality of everything surrounding it quietly declines. Different states, different countries, identical pattern. And it is not limited to America. Systems that adjust early produce modest, manageable changes. Systems that defer produce crises. This pattern repeats with the consistency of a documented mechanism. Because the underlying structure is the same everywhere, the people who read the actuarial reports, who understood the funded ratios, who recognized that a statutory benefit is not a contractual guarantee, who distributed their dependency before the revision arrived. Those people experienced pension crises as a financial setback rather than a catastrophe. The people who trusted the statement, who assumed the number would keep arriving unchanged, who built their entire retirement structure on a single institutional promise, those people experienced the same crises differently, not because they were less intelligent, not because they were careless, because the system they trusted had no structural incentive to explain its own fragility. The annual statement is designed to reassure. The actuarial report is designed for specialists. The gap between those two documents is where most pension participants spend their entire working lives. Diane's statement looked correct. Eleanor's didn't. The difference between those two moments, the statement that arrives on schedule and the letter that reveals the revision, is where most people live their entire lives. And they don't realize it until the number changes. Leave a comment with one question. What is the funded ratio of your pension system? Most people reading this don't know. Now you do, and knowing changes what you do next. The actuarial reports are already written. Most people simply are not reading them. The question is, will you?